Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, der er lyd.
Nice. Muting. audio is working. Hello and welcome to part 3 of our rocket ship. So quickly before I can begin, I will open up the game from last time. Remember, you can find the current version that we are working on from today in the description down below. Let's see here. Quickly load up our game. It's called this one, part 2, and there we go. So this is the game from last time where we managed to have our rocket fly around, which we call our player, and we made it able to shoot. I can quickly show you. And we also added an obstacle flying in from left to right, where we have to avoid it. That's basically what we made last time. And if we hit one of these rocks, we will lose the game. Today we will make it so we can actually destroy these rocks flying in and make them, whenever we are shooting them, they will go into smaller pieces and then scatter around. So we will set it so it will be 2 or 3 smaller pieces that will shoot in random directions that you have to avoid, just to make it more interactive and more fun to actually destroy these rocks coming in. And also we will add some sounds to our shooting mechanic, but let's start out with the rocks and have them or be able to destroy them in the game. So for this we will need to go onto our rock here, if you select it, and you can see the code from last time. And basically this is the original that you see here that we have, or we are hiding it, and then we are creating clones, which is why you see all the blocks start with when I start as a clone. That's because we don't want to have like 50 of the rocks down here. We just clone them so we don't have to make the code multiple times, which is quite neat, if you ask me. First thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna create a smaller version of our current rock, and this is the smaller pieces that we are gonna scatter whenever we are destroying one of these things. So to create a clone, or we can simply duplicate it, we can right click on the rock and then select duplicate, and it will create an exact copy of the current rock, and just put a number 2 after the name. The first thing that we're gonna do is rename it, because rock 2 doesn't make sense. I'm gonna call this one small rock, because this is just a smaller version of our current rock. So yes, call it small rock. And I don't want it to be the same size as the original, so I'm gonna change this to have half the size. And if you remember, we have size here in the middle. Make sure you have selected the small rock that we are gonna change, or the small object if you have something else. I'm gonna put this to 50. And quickly to see what it looks like, I can, what we call, unhide it. I can show it again by selecting the eye here without the line over it. So you see, this is a smaller version of the original rock, and I can show you in comparison with the original here. So it's way smaller. But this is good. We're gonna make it so it will spawn in random sizes, so it's never the same for the smaller pieces of the rock. So let's quickly unhide these again by selecting the eye with the line over it. That's like, so you can't see it. Great, so now we have this. What we did when we duplicated the original was also duplicate the code that we actually had made for the rock. So if we see on the small rock here and on the code section, we have the same blocks as the other one here. But we don't actually need all these blocks and the same code for it, because we don't want it to act the same way. So I'm gonna remove all of these by dragging and dropping them to the left side here. Great, so now we have a clean screen without any code on it. the first thing that we are gonna do is we're gonna add the block that says when I start as a clone, because we are again gonna clone this small rock. So anything that will happen when we clone it. So whenever it gets cloned, something will happen. And first we're gonna put some movement to it. It should move in like with a certain speed and in a certain direction. And you remember with them any movement that will be in the motion blocks, the blue ones. So if we go in here, we have the one called move 10 steps. We've used this a lot. 10 is a bit too fast, so I think I'm gonna start with 4 as the current speed of how fast it should be shooting out whenever we destroy the big rock. To make it so that it keeps moving, we will need the forever block that we also have used before. Here, forever, and make sure that it like eats the blue block, so it's inside. And then the last thing is we want it to go in a random direction, so we don't know which way it's gonna fly whenever we spawn one of these. And again, that's in our motion blocks. If we go into the blue ones and find point in direction, it should be somewhere in the middle of all these blocks. So this one, currently it has the number 90 in the white area, in the white space. If you click it, you can see there comes up an arrow here that you can move around. This is the circle, and this basically, the way the arrow points, that's the direction that it's gonna move in. We are gonna put a random number, so we don't know which direction it's gonna shoot out in. But let's first try and see what this looks like. So right now, whenever we are spawning one of these small blocks, it's gonna shoot out in that direction. So to test the code here, we need to create a clone of this small rock. There's one easy way to test it. We simply go into control, the orange blocks, and at the bottom we have one create clone right here. If you take that one out and just simply click on it, we are creating clones of the current object, which is the small rock for this one. But as you might see on the screen, there are no of these small rocks, and that's because it's currently hidden. So actually the first thing that we need to add whenever we are creating one of these is to unhide it, to show it, and with animation and looks, that's in the purple blocks. So if we go in here and at the bottom somewhere, we have one called show and one called hide. We'll need the one called called show in this because we want to show it. So simply add that to before we do all the movement and direction. Let's clean this up. And if I try and click the create clone now, you'll see that whenever I click it, I'm spawning one, and then it just flies in that direction because that's the way the arrow was pointing from this number. So you can actually see I can currently control it with this circle thing. It looks quite funny. So I'm gonna stop the game, and now we're gonna put in a random number, so it goes in a random direction. And to set in a number, we have to go into operators. That's our green blocks. This is where we can do some calculations and math, really cool stuff. But we are gonna need the one called pick random. And the numbers that we have to put in here has to be, if we look at this, if we go all the way to the top, now it's 0. We have to cover the whole circle. And to make this easy for you, I'm just gonna tell you the numbers. It's gonna be minus, so make sure you have the dash, the line, and then 180. And the second number should be just 180. So not with the dash in front. Actually, I'm gonna zoom in a bit so you can see it better. So like this. This will cover the whole circle in directions. And if we test it again with me creating a clone, you can see some crazy stuff happening right now. So this is not working as I actually intended. What it is actually doing right now, it's basically changing its direction every second or even faster, because we have the point in direction inside our forever block, which means it keeps changing direction, which is why you see it's like doing crazy stuff. Quick solution and the right way of doing it is take out the point in direction and add it just above our show, because we want it to point in a direction and then move in that way without changing directions again. So if we test now and create a clone, you can see whenever I create a clone, it goes in a new direction. So we never know which direction it goes to. I'm gonna split up the code to make it easier to read. The way I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna add another one of these when I start as a clone. And you find it in the orange at the bottom. So I'm gonna do it like this. So the first block I have here will be whenever we spawn it. It's gonna first point in a direction and then it's gonna show it. The next one is controlling the movement of our new objects, of the small rocks. And one thing we need to add, as you can see on the game screen right now, they keep moving while they are all on the edge. So at some point we're gonna have 100, maybe 500 of these, and we basically want them to destroy or disappear whenever they hit the edges, so we don't get too many of these and crash the game at some point. Because if we have too many objects in the game might not be able to run as good anymore. So a quick way of adding this, let's do it like this. A quick way of making them disappear whenever they hit one of the edges. We have done this a lot before. We're gonna need one of the if blocks and forever and a when I start as a clone, because we're gonna ask a question if one of the small rocks are they hitting one of the edges, one of the 4 edges of the screen. So let's find the blocks that we need. So if to ask the question, a sensing to which is the question, and a forever to keep asking throughout the whole game. If we don't have the forever block, it will only ask when we start the game one time and that's it, and then it's not gonna work. So forever is a very important block for this. Let's do it like this. And the last thing is we're gonna delete the current clone that we have. And you find these at the bottom here with the other clone blocks. There's one called delete this clone. We're gonna add this inside. So it should look something like this. And we need to change the question that we're asking. So if we are reading this, it's saying, if touching mouse pointer, then delete this clone. So basically, if I start the game now and I create a lot of these, so basically I can remove all of them by hovering with my mouse over them, but that's not what we wanted. So change the mouse pointer to edge by clicking it and select edge. This should, when we start the game and spawn a lot of these, they simply disappear whenever they reach one of the edges. Great, so making progress. I think this is pretty cool. So now we basically have the mechanics for what they should do when they are spawning, or when we, when they are spawning. Now we need to make it so they actually spawn by themselves when we are destroying one of the big rocks. So let's start by making the rocket or our player able to actually destroy the big rocks with our shooting mechanic. So if we go on to our player again and we look in here, first we have our go to starting position, and then we have our movement towards this one. And I actually think that we have to go into the rock instead here. So basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it in between here. Actually, we're gonna move this over here. So the first block here will set the position for our rock, and then it's gonna show it, and then it's gonna move. The blocks down here will, again, when one of these hit one of the edges, it's gonna destroy itself. We're gonna add a new one that says if we are being hit by fire, we are gonna also delete the clone, but we're gonna create 3 new ones, or 2 new ones of the smaller version of it, and then we're gonna scatter these around the screen. So we're gonna need one of the when I start as a clone, and again we're gonna need forever, and we're gonna need if to ask a question. So this is very good practice of using all these if blocks. These are very powerful in coding. And then we're gonna use forever, something like this, and sensing to ask or to put in the question if touching. And instead of choosing edge or a mouse pointer here, we are gonna choose the fire, and it's gonna have the same name as what we called our shooting. So if you called it something else, select that one. The next thing that we're gonna add is we're gonna delete the current clone whenever we are being hit by fire, and then we're gonna test that. So again, delete this clone is at the bottom in the orange ones. So something like this. So let's test if we can actually destroy them by shooting it. So testing the game here. So I've set it the rocks to spawn after I think 4 seconds. See. So I was able to destroy it. That works as intended. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna stop the game again. So now we actually made it so we can destroy these and make it easier for ourselves if we are actively shooting the rocks flying around. But now we're gonna make it a bit more difficult for us if we adding the small rocks scattering around the screen. So we have to avoid it whenever we are hitting one of these. And we're gonna add that to the same block where we have here. If it's touched by fire, then it will be destroyed. So we're gonna add some repeat code. And if we look in the orange ones, we haven't used this before, I think. It's called repeat. So it's different from the forever, but it does more or less the same thing. Forever will keep happening as it says forever. If we take the repeat, it will only happen a certain amount of time. So currently it's set to 10 times. It will run the code 10 times. In our case, we are going to use it to spawn smaller versions of the rock, and then when they spawn, they will scatter around. And basically, the number that we put in there will control how many of the smaller rocks will spawn. So make sure you add the delete at the bottom of the repeat. So delete this clone should be underneath the repeat block, and then you're gonna add that into our if touching fire. So I'm not gonna have 10 rocks spawning, but we can definitely try that to see what it looks like. But I'm gonna start out with 3. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create clones inside here. So if we find in the orange control at the bottom, create clone of, it's gonna say myself, but instead of choosing that, we're gonna select our small rock. So if you click myself and then choose our small rock, then it will create 3 of the small rocks. So let's test what and see what happens. So after 4 seconds, it should spawn. There we go, and it did. Let's see again. So you might notice that they all spawn from the same position. Let's see, there we go. yeah, so they all spawn at the same position each time. What we need to do is we're gonna make it so that the 3 smaller rocks will actually come out from the big one. So it looks real instead of it just coming from the same position like here all the time. Like they're gonna splatter out from here. We're gonna make sure that it knows where the rock is, and then from that point it's gonna scatter out in all random directions. So we're making it close to impossible for you to avoid. I think that's gonna be pretty interesting. And to make this work, we are gonna work with the variables that we also have done before. This is a very powerful tool, the variables, where we can control basically numbers and text inside the game when it's actually running. So if we go into variables, that's the dark orange, I think, at the bottom here. Currently, I have one called player direction. Are we using that one? So we already created a player direction. So we created a variable that was helping us make sure that we are shooting in the right direction. So our fire is actually shooting out in the direction that the rocket is looking at. Now we're gonna create 2 more variables that's gonna find it's gonna keep track of where the current rock is located. And it's something that we call X numbers and Y numbers. And you see it basically everywhere in Scratch. One example is right here where it says X, and here you have a Y number. We are gonna find the X and Y number for the rock. It's not so important that you actually understand the X and Y. Just make sure that you are actually creating the same variables as me. So what I just did now is we're gonna create 2 variables. So basically we're gonna have 2 boxes that we can put numbers into, and then the game will keep changing the numbers in there to make sure we have the right ones. So make a variable by clicking the box on the top. Make sure you have selected for all sprites. This is very important. And we are gonna name it rock, and then space, and then X. Because it's gonna hold the number for the X for our rock. And then we are gonna create a second one called rock Y. So we know where these numbers are. And it's gonna make sense in just a bit. So make these 2 that we call rock X and rock Y. Press OK. So right now you see here we have, and it's also gonna show in game. We're gonna remove so to begin with, I'm gonna have the numbers stay here. Currently it says 0. If you wanna hide them, you can simply go to the left here and press these 2. But I think it's very good to begin with that you can actually see that the numbers are changing throughout the game when we play it, because this is what we're gonna use. So right now they contain the number 0, both of them. We're gonna put in a new number when we play the game, and then it's gonna use that number to move certain objects. So if we go back to our rock, the original one, the big one that it starts out with, here we are gonna add, so I'm just gonna move these around. So this is the important one, the one where if we are touched by fire, we will create 3 of the smaller ones. What we will do here is we are gonna make sure it's the one called set and not change. We're gonna need 2 of these right underneath each other here. One should change the number for our rock X, and the other one should change for rock Y. So change these into rock X and Y. Right now we would set them to 0 again, as it says here, set rock X to 0. We're gonna put in a new number. So basically we need to know where the current rock is located. And there is a block that knows this number for us, and it's in motion, the blue ones. If we go all the way at the bottom here, we actually have here the blue ones, X position and Y position. This will keep updating by itself throughout the game and know where our rock is located. So these two blocks actually hold the numbers that we need. And you see I checked these two boxes here to have them show in game, so you can see which numbers it actually holds right now. And if we just for fun start the game, you should be able to see these numbers change a bit. Maybe not. Okay, so it only holds 4 for the first one, but just to show you that it actually holds a number to begin with, let's unhide these. Since these two blocks hold the number that we need to add it to our variable block. So we are setting our variable to have the number for the current rock. Make sure that you put the X position in the X variable and the Y position in the Y variable. So it should look something like this. Now we need to add it to our code. And I think a good position for this would be above the if. So make sure it's not inside this if block, but it has to be inside the forever, because we need to keep updating them. Let's see here. Actually, let's try and test this to see. So what you should see now is when I start as a clone. Yes. So what you can see now is that the numbers are actually changing, because it's changing from a minus number then to a plus because it's moving across X. And the Y will only change once because that's up and down. We are actually gonna move these two blocks because I think it's better that we only update them once. So if we take these ones out, so here we are gonna set the X and Y whenever it's hit by fire. So put them inside the if, but above the repeat. So it should look something like this. Next thing that we're gonna add is, so now we know the position. Now we just need to add it to the smaller rock so they know where to go. So we have to go into the small rock inside the code here. So as I mentioned before, at the beginning, I like to have all the position and looks for the character, and then later I want to have the movement and when it should be deleted. So at the very beginning here, where we are setting a direction for where it should like go, fly around, we also need to set the position of the rocks. So what we will do is we are gonna go into, since we are moving something, again it's the blue blocks. We want to go to X and Y. So this one, go to X, the number that we just made, and the Y number. I put that at the very beginning here. So I don't need the clone anymore because that was only for testing, so I'm gonna remove it. Currently it has set numbers, like it has 60 and 29. We're gonna put in the numbers that we know from the rock that we just made two variables for. To find these blocks, you go into variables and then at the top here. So make sure you put X into X position and Y into Y position. This is why we made the names like we did, so we know which is for which position. So X is for X and Y is for the Y position. So now I'm gonna unhide these two numbers because I don't need them anymore. And I will test the game to see if it does what it's supposed to. Let's see, it spawns. Come on. So not, there we go. And we have 3 smaller ones that scatters around. So we haven't made it so we can actually shoot the small ones, but I do think that's fair. We need to add so whenever we are hitting the small rocks, we will also lose the game. And we can simply copy what we made from the rock If we go back here, no, I think actually that's on the player code. So if we go in here, when I click, yes. So at the bottom here in the player code, we have, if we are touching the rock, we will stop all. We basically need to add an other if that is asking, are we hitting the small rock? So simply just copy or duplicate the if that you have right here. So you can hold your mouse over it and right click and then duplicate. Then you have a copy of it, and then you can simply add that underneath. Make sure you don't add it inside here. It has to be underneath the if, but still inside the forever. Everything has to be eaten by that. And the last thing is we're gonna change the rock to the small rock. So now we are checking for both of the obstacles. So let's test the game quickly to see if it actually is working. Testing is very important and fun to do. And you can see my rocket is basically, whenever it reaches the mouse, it's doing crazy movements. And we lost the game. So now we can also lose by hitting the smaller objects. Great. Let's see here. So now we made some more obstacles to basically avoid. I do think that we have to add something to... Let's add some audio to our shooting mechanic. I think that's gonna be nice. So we want to play a sound whenever we are shooting. If we go into sounds here on the top where it has code, costumes and sound, go on to sound. We currently have, or at least I have 3 selected here, but I'm gonna find a whole new one. And I can do that at the bottom here. You can also record your own if you select the record option. But I'm gonna find one of Scratch's own. And I'm gonna search for space. Found a pretty nice one. And you should be able to hear it as well from the stream. So I think this soup is good for me. I'm gonna change it a bit because I don't like the end of it. So I'm gonna select it. And now I have my sound here. I can play it again by clicking the play button.
Lyden fra indgame er meget højere end din stemme, så du kan måske skrue lidt ned for indgame. Og
yes, I hear that the sound. Let's do it like this. Oh, wait. Was that better? Sound is too high?
Det var bedre, ja.
Great. Gonna put it down a bit more. There we go. So here you see the sound. This is sound waves. We're not gonna go much into detail, but we can actually change it with these buttons down here. We can make it faster, we can make it slower, we can make it louder. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose the option fade out. So it, like, when it comes to the end, it's gonna like lower the volume basically. So by clicking this fade out, you can actually see the waves now, or the form of this changes into like this needle thing. So this is the sound that I'm gonna use. So we are basically done in the sound area here. So if we go back to the code, we're gonna go to where we have our shooting mechanic, where we have the button that actually allows us to shoot. And I think we made that on the player. So if you go onto your player, you should have one called when space key is pressed. This is basically where we are gonna add it. Let's see here, space. No, actually we're gonna add, so since we're pressing space, we're creating a clone of fire. So we're gonna add the sound to when the fire starts as a clone. So if you go on to fire, so in here where we have the first block, which does all the setup for the fire. First it goes to the player, then it points in the direction. This is also where we're gonna add the sound. And sound blocks are these pink ones at the top 3. So in here we are gonna find a block that's called, I think it's called play sound. Here we go, play sound. and currently it's set to pop, apparently. So I'm not able to, okay. Let's see where I put my sound. So the sounds that we have here so if we go back to the player where I added the sound, it doesn't go into the fire. As you see, I only have like one called poop, and I'm gonna delete this, and instead of finding it again, I'm just gonna move it directly to it. So I think I should be able to just drag it and dropping it to my fire. So if you hover over it, I think here, and go back, and now I have the sound for the fire. So going back to the code, we should be able to select soup. It's a weird name, but it's cool. Let's see if we can get it to play when we are playing the game. I think that's pretty cool. Ah, I lost the game. So now it actually plays a sound whenever we are shooting out fires. Next thing is so now we have sound for our shooting. I do think that we need a more space background, like more outer space thing, instead of just a white background. Finding a new background we can do at the bottom right here. This is called backdrops in Scratch. So choose a backdrop. You can also paint your own. I'm not gonna do that. Because I can't draw stars. So I'm gonna find one in here. And we have all of these to select from. We can also search for more. I do think there's this one called Nebula. Let's just for this Nebula. I think this one is pretty cool for my space game. So if I select it, we should actually see it just goes directly into the game. One thing I want you to see is if you select the stage, the backdrop over here, and then you actually see the code for it, but we want to go into backdrops here on the top left. You'll see we still have the white canvas or white background here on the top. I'm gonna remove it by deleting it by pressing the trash can on the top right, because we don't need it anymore and we don't want it to be there since we're not using it. So now we only have the one that we are using. Going back to our player and then back to code in here, and if we play the game, it looks way nicer with the background, the shooting mechanic, and shooting the rocks. They scatter out. We have a chance of dodging it. I think that's pretty cool so far. To make it into a full game, let's simply add a timer so we can see for how long can we actually survive in this game. And also next time we're gonna add like a point system to it, but for this time I'm just simply gonna add a timer like we also did in the previous game, just to have something that we can relate to if we are trying to compete with friends. I think that's a pretty simple thing to have, but also pretty nice to see who can survive for the longest in your game. And last time we made a timer using variables, so we're basically creating a variable that starts at 0 and then it just counts each second throughout the game. So go into variables, then make a variable. We're gonna call this timer because that's what it's gonna be. And for all sprites, press OK. And now it shows the timer 0. And we're gonna add this code to our background where we have like the general code for everything in the game. So on the stage here, this is also where we are controlling how many rocks and how fast they should be spawning. We're gonna add a green flag. Yes. So here we are gonna make the timer work. Currently it's just at 0, and if we start the game it will keep staying at 0 because our variable is containing the number 0 and we are not changing it with our code yet. So to change it, we have if you go back to variable, we have one called change instead of set. So here we're just changing the number all the time. The other one we're setting it, so it will keep setting it to 0, but if we change it, we'll just add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're gonna do this forever in the game. So let's add forever to it, like this. If you start the game, you're gonna see something crazy. No, because I made a mistake. Currently I'm changing the player direction by 1. I don't want to change the player direction, I want to change the timer by 1. So simply change it to timer that we just made, and then start the game. What you will notice now is that the timer is going way too fast. And that's because it's happening faster than a second, so we need to set a delay, a wait for it. And we have that in control at the top here. So simply add a wait above the change, and it has to be 1 second because we're gonna count seconds. If we start the game now, there's still one more thing we need to make. As you can see, it doesn't start at 0, but now it just keeps counting from where it left off. When we start the game, when we press the green flag, we want to set the timer to 0. So we don't want to change it by 0, but we want to set the number to 0. Put in a new number. So go into variables and then set, and then put that above the forever. If I actually put this inside and change it to timer, you'll see that it never counts seconds anymore, because we keep setting the variable to 0. So make sure you put it outside of above the forever block. So now it should work. And if I just lose the game, you should see that the timer stops at 5. And when we start the game, it starts at 0. So now we have a timer in the game. And actually what I'm gonna do quickly is where we currently have set my rocks to spawn every 5 seconds. I'm gonna set it down to 3 just to make it more interesting. And I think that's what we managed to make for today. But let's quickly end up with testing the game to see what happens. I do think that it's become a pretty nice game with the background and shooting mechanics and rocks scattering around that we have to basically avoid. Let's see. Oh, I lost the game. Next time we will finish up this game and gonna add a few more things to make it like a full game like we did with the last one. But this next time will be the last part for our Rocketship game. So we can finish this up, and the time after that will be our last stream, which will be a Christmas ending stream basically, where we will see what we have made and also would like your guys' input for what you have made throughout this online sessions. But yes, that's it for today. Hope you were able to follow. As you may already know, you can find the current version of the game in the description below, so you can actually follow today's stream. And you can also download the current version that we made throughout this session today. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.